Hey everyone, good question today. Hi Claire, I've heard you say that the self is the experience in the moment, so any idea of self can come up at any time. I struggle to see the concept of no self. I've listened to Safe and Part of Home, that's two of our programs, and it's as though I just don't understand the language around no self. I also don't get how to relate to any thoughts that start with I, how to tell if it's coming from your true self or the conditioned self. Oh, such a good question. So much in it. So really is the question really is what are we? And then we can look at the sort of levels of information within that. So if we consider what are we are consciousness, life, intelligence, aliveness located within a form in which experience is happening. That's about as basic as we can get. And the form itself is a function of perception. So all of it is up for grabs, really. The whole content of the experience of being is an ongoing creation. The only truth, the only thing that doesn't change ever in what we are is aliveness, life intelligence, consciousness, presence, the infinite, the absolute. This is what we are. And then within that is a process of creation, of thought, of belief, of learning, that creates an ongoing experience of what we are. So when there is a believed idea of ourselves that is fixed, objective, true, separate from, separate from life intelligence, separate from consciousness, separate from aliveness, there's me separate from all of it, and everything that is believed about that me is true, that is our greatest confusion. Because as the listener said, the any idea of that self can come up at any time, because we see it, don't we? We see sometimes we think we're the greatest thing on earth. Sometimes we think we're an abject failure. Sometimes we think people love us. Sometimes we think no one loves us. Sometimes we think we're really getting stuff right. Sometimes we think we're messing everything up. Sometimes we think we're beautiful. Sometimes we think we're ugly. What are we? What are we? And then all of that is affected by mood, by hormones, by whether we're hungry or not, whether we're tired, whether we've exercised, what's going on in our belly and our gut bacteria. It's a total creation. So that, people call it the little self, the identity, the ego. It's an accumulation of beliefs, and many teachers say it's an accumulation of trauma, of shock, of wounds to the system, of fearful events. So let's be gentle with ourselves here. It's a conglomeration of really the confusion about what we are, and the fight for survival of that believed idea of us. And I think what is fascinating about this conversation is that with every realization about what is true, and with every falling away of stuff that was never true, and yet which had been carried around for decades and had been the perceptual lens through which all of reality was created, gone. And now who are we? We're in an entirely different experience of being in an entirely different reality. I mean, it's really crazy, but that's how it is, because this this identification through which the idea of self is fixed in place and the idea of an externally objective separate world is fixed in place, that can change at any moment. And the deeper into inquiry we go, the more that is just layers of that are falling away, until all that remains as true is what is before the mind, before thought, what is enabling thought, making awareness possible. And that's the infinite and absolute truth of our being. So then the listener is saying, I also don't get how to relate to any thoughts that start with I. And this is a good question, I think. And you hear some people we switch to the passive voice, because it's true. Listening is happening, isn't it? Speaking is happening. But I would say, I think with the I, that can become very light, really, because the I really, all it represents is is that point of location between the infinite and absolute and this momentary experience, isn't it? This momentary perception. That's all it is. So it's like, it's really on that line between formless and form, isn't it? Between infinite and the relative. And so the I, we can just be very light with it. When the I gets very heavy, and when it becomes something that has to be defended, that has to be protected, that is being confronted and challenged, which is the victim in the situation, which is isolated, which is being left out, which is being criticized. Very interesting to see what that I is in that moment, because in that moment the I is in survival, and it really is in that moment the triggering of all the wounds that the body mind has experienced up until then. And those wounds might go back for centuries, mightn't they? They might have just been handed down, and they're being activated now. And in that survival of this me that looks so real, so true, there is acute suffering, and in the heart of that suffering is the portal to be really clear about what is at stake here, what is being defended, and these sorts of questions bring everything back to the truth of us. I mean, this question, it seems to me, is the only question for all of our lives. What are we? What is the self? Because it's through that question that the whole system settles back into reality, and through that question where everything is healed, and it's the only place, really. So thank you. Lots of love. Bye.